There are words, when repeated over and over again, are supposed to stick in our minds and our hearts and become touchstones for us. Words like wash your hands, stand 6 feet apart, wear a mask, stay home when you're sick. Those are certainly the words of our days as we go through this pandemic. We've heard them, we know them, and we are supposed to live them. The other part of that is that we are also living in a time of questions. Have you traveled out of the province? Do you have a sore throat? Do you have a runny nose? All sorts of questions are being asked of us before we step into a dentist's office, the doctor's office, the library, or anywhere really. Being asked questions over and over again is part of the reality of our days. It was also part of the reality of Jesus' day to have questions asked of him over and over again. Only for Jesus, the questions that were being asked of him were not about his physical health. They were often questions that were designed to discredit him, to trick him into trouble. Today's gospel is a great example of that. Matthew tells the story of Jesus in the temple in Jerusalem. He's in conflict with the authorities. He's turned the tables of the money changers and he's telling parables. And today he starts in the debates. You can almost hear a sneer in the tone as the Pharisees and the Herodians have plotted to entrap him. Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the ways of God in accordance with truth and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? They have him. If he says, yes, it's lawful to pay taxes, then the people will turn against him. And if he says, no, it's not lawful to pay taxes, then it will give the authorities even more reason to persecute him. But Jesus will not be done in by their trickery. He asks for a coin, something that their faith should prohibit them from having because it bears the image of the emperor, of Caesar, and the claim of his place as the divine Son of God. But sure enough, they have one. And we know this how the story goes. Jesus says, whose face is on the coin? And they answer, Caesar, the emperor's. And then Jesus says, then give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's. Give to Caesar all that is Caesar's. And then the crux comes when Jesus adds, and give to God the things that are God's. What are the things that are God's, we ask? If the coin that bears the image of the emperor belongs to the emperor, then what is it that bears the image of God? Oh, Jesus, you are making us think. And we can't help but think about the beginning of Genesis. God creates the heavens, the earth, light, darkness, water plants, creatures that filled the seas and the skies, and that completed 5 days. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind. And then God said, let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness. So God created humankind in God's image. Give to God what is God's. Give to God what bears God's image. That's the twist. We bear God's image. We are called to give ourselves to God. Those are the words that we are called to hear again and again and again and again, as often as we hear all the other instructions of life to wash our hands and stand apart and everything else. We are called to give ourselves to God, and that's to become the touchstone for us. We are beloved children of God. We are just like salt. We are light. We're called to bring forth the very best from others. We are called to shine our lights into places of desperation and decay. We are called to let that identity echo in everything that we say or do. One of our colleagues, the Reverend Rafael Malpica Padilla, tells the story of another colleague, Father Edmund Delatorio, a priest serving in the Philippines many years ago. He was imprisoned for advocating in favor of the poor and oppressed people. And he was put into prison alone, and then with cellmates. In prison, he asked for bread and wine so that he could have communion. They gave him bread and wine. Shortly after, he asked for more bread and wine so he could have communion with his cellmate. And as day after day went by, he asked for more and more bread and wine, as everyone in the whole cell block started to want to have communion with him as well. Through the sharing of bread and wine, they became a community of equals together, remembering that they were beloved children of God. The warden heard about this and immediately put an end to the practice of communion. He wrote in his order, "Bread and wine in the hands of this priest becomes a revolutionary weapon." We are all beloved children of God. The words of communion remind us of our connection to the Christ, of our place as God's children, and that's not to be taken lightly. We have shared the bread of life and the cup of joy. We are called to give to God what is God's, and to remind us of our calling and our identity, that we are all equal, all loved. And that's not to be disregarded or discarded. May the words, "We are beloved children of God," echo as our touchstone this day and always. Amen.